You may well be familiar with Lexus's particular brand of slick-looking executive hybrids, but you probably won't know much about this one. Aimed squarely at the Audi A6 and BMW 5 Series, the Lexus ES looks like great value given its low emissions and generous standard equipment.
In fact, given that it starts from just £36,000 despite that very generous equipment list, and can be had on finance for under £500 per month even with a very modest deposit, the Lexus really does undercut all its obvious diesel rivals by quite some margin on both purchase costs and, thanks to the hybrid powertrain, on company car tax as well. So we know that it's good value already, but in such a competitive class as this, that might not be enough. So, is the ES all about saving cash, or is there more to it than that? Well, that is what we are here to find out. So, the first thing to know about the Lexus ES is that it is only available as the 300h, and that is a self-charging, or also known as a full hybrid. And the nub of it is that you don't have to plug it in. Instead, you get a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine up front, and between that and the regenerative braking, that actually charges up the small battery pack and gives you a useful amount of electric running around town. So, of course, that means that it is efficient, and that means the base model does 100 grams per kilometre, which is not bad actually, or if you go for the F Sport like this, then it does 106. And that, company car fans, means that you get cheap company car tax, one of the real big incentives for this car, although I would add that it's still not quite as cheap on that front as the BMW 530e plug-in hybrid, which is one of the main rivals for this car. So we know it's efficient in terms of its CO2, in terms of its economy, because you have got that 4-cylinder petrol engine. It's actually not as bad as you might think. You do actually spend quite a bit of time in electric mode. You can also stick it in EV mode if you hit it down here, as long as you've got enough battery charge, and particularly if you're doing slower speeds, it will just trickle into electric mode and you can cruise around silently, which is a really nice feature. We've done quite a lot of motorway miles in it, and we've seen about 40 mpg, which isn't too bad. You're going to see better, frankly, in a diesel alternative like the 520d, the Audi A6 2-litre diesel, the Mercedes E220d. It's one of the things with this car, it's got so many really, really good rivals, so it needs to be very good itself. And in terms of the way it drives, I have to say it's lagging behind the rest. It's fine, it's absolutely fine, that's the thing. It's quite quiet, obviously particularly in electric mode it's quite quiet. We know that it's efficient enough, and that front wheel drive chassis, loads of grip, the steering's perfectly fine, you know exactly where the car's going, you know how much grip you've got. It's not an unpleasant car to drive by any stretch of the imagination. And actually, it doesn't really feel slow either, although it's not as quick as, you know, those rivals that I've already mentioned. Certainly in the mid-range it's pretty good, but this is what happens if you accelerate even moderately, and you get a real kind of big kind of buzzy noise in the background from that petrol engine, and that is because this automatic gearbox, which is called a CVT gearbox, the way it's set up, it means that it lets the engine rev right out even though you're actually not accelerating very hard, so you get a lot of noise and not that much progress basically. And that, to be honest, is actually the most annoying thing about the way that the ES drives. Other than that, the ride's pretty good. This F Sport model gets adaptive dampers, which the base model doesn't, so that's one of the big things, as well as the way the F Sport looks. There you go, look. Buzzing away in the background there. So it's quite comfortable, driving position's nice. Do you know what? It's just a fine car. But is that damning with faint praise? Well, I have to say, in a class of cars that drive as well as, you know, a Jaguar XF and a BMW 5 Series, then yes, I suspect it probably is. The Lexus's interior does it credit, actually, I have to say. All the buttons are nicely damped and all the aircon's very straightforward to use. There are some scratchy plastics you might not expect down around here, but otherwise everything feels very nice. Even these odd little Shrek ears that you get above the steering wheel, which do the driving modes, and weirdly a very prominent traction control off button as well. Regardless, the interior feels really nice and is very comfortable, and you get masses of standard equipment. Even the base level car gets a sunroof, adaptive cruise control, LED headlights, keyless entry, front and rear parking sensor with reversing camera. You know, you get pretty much everything you could want. However, there is a big caveat to that, and that is that the standard sat-nav system you get is this 8-inch screen that you see here, and it's controlled with this incredibly frustrating touchpad. you do get used to it to an extent, but I'm afraid it's always infuriating, no matter how long you spend using it.
There is an upgrade to a 12-inch screen, but that's only available on higher spec trims as part of a £4,000 pack, and that won't solve the big problem of that annoying touchpad interface. Still, if you can live with the standard media system, which you also can't add Apple CarPlay or Android Auto to, then practicality is unlikely to be an issue. There's loads of legroom in the back seats of the ES, although headroom is a bit tight by comparison to some rivals, and the fact that the seats don't fold could also be frustrating despite the fact that you get a through-loading hatch.
So the Lexus ES is a really fine car. It looks and feels appropriately posh, it's good value, and it's fine if a bit middling to drive. But that doesn't really feel like enough compared to the excellent rivals that it faces, particularly given the massive price jump that you face if you want a decent infotainment system. So certainly our money would be going towards a BMW 530e instead. And as to whether it is just about money saving or if there's more to it than that, well, perfectly fine as it is, it's really just about the money saving. Do go to DrivingElectric.com for loads more reviews, advice and news on all of the electric and hybrid cars out there, and check us out on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram.